Sup freaks, it's me, ya boy. So, I'm a little bit late to the party on this one. As of writing this, Hazbin Hotel premiered 2 months ago now, and God knows how long it would have been by the time this releases. But I still wanted to add my opinion to the steaming pile of hot garbage that has been the internet discussing this goddamn show recently, so here we are. I just want to get this out of the way before we start. I've heard there's been a whole ton of drama surrounding Vivzy Pop herself recently, but I will not be discussing it today, nor ever probably. There are two main reasons for this. One is that I don't really want to be discussing controversy on my channel. I'd like to keep things as positive as I can around these parts, at least when it concerns real people instead of shows or anything fictional. And two is that I don't think I really have enough knowledge on this subject to discuss it, and I don't feel like doing the research for no reason. Sorry if that's what you came here for, but I'm just going to be discussing my thoughts on the show itself. Right, so, Hazbin Hotel, huh? Let's open this can of worms. So, I was a big fan of the show when I first discovered the pilot back in 2019, and at that point I was kind of obsessed with it. On the one hand, it inspired me to create some of the projects I'm still working on today, and on the other hand, I made a lot of OCs. So many OCs. But since then, I've moved on quite a lot, and wasn't too interested in the show when it first came out, but decided to check it out anyway, for old time's sake. And yeah, I have some thoughts. Let's start with the positive, shall we? So one thing I really like about the show is the animation. When you compare the finished show to the pilot, which already had very pretty animation for its time, it just looks so polished and nice. It may not have the same amount of beautiful background art and vibrant lighting as Hell of a Boss, but it still has a lot of scenes that look just lovely. The music numbers especially look so grand. I don't really get why so many people hate Vivzy Pop's art style, because to me it's kind of reminiscent of early Disney. But yeah, props to the animators for the show, you're cooked. Another thing I really liked about this show was the music. Almost every song was excellent. There are quite a few instances where a musical number either didn't feel necessary in the context of the story, or the message behind it was very wishy-washy and almost misguided in some places. But despite this, the tunes are always catchy, if not excellent, and the vocal work is always great, which kind of leads me to my next point about the voice acting. As much as I'll miss the old cast from the pilot, I cannot deny that the new cast is excellent. Blake Roman is doing Michael Kovac's legacy so much justice. The voice actors for characters like Charlie and Baggy are eerily similar to the pilot, to the point where I thought they were the same people. And they even managed to bag Spinell, Penny Parker, and goddamn Dr. Facilier. Holy shit, this cast is kinda stacked. The last thing I'd like to mention here is the character writing and dynamics. While the characters are lacking in quite a few areas, which I'll be getting to in a second, their dynamics with each other are often a blast to watch. As someone who has been watching Hell of a Boss quite a lot, which yes, I agree that the second season has been significantly worse than the first. Really? Shut up! You shut up! Anyway, it was a welcome surprise to find that the humour was a lot less reliant on swear words and dick jokes than its sister series, and was overall just a lot more mature. I generally enjoy Hell of a Boss most of the time, but I will admit that the dialogue and humour can get really grating after a while, so this was a breath of fresh air for me. Even Angel Dust, the token sex joke guy, had a reasonable amount of restraint. Mostly. Right. Now on to the main reason I'm making this video. This show has so many flaws, I just can't. It's such a shame because there's so much passion and potential here to make a rich thematic story, but there's just so much holding it back from being good. Let's begin with one of the smaller issues, shall we? So I've seen a lot of people say that the show kind of relies on you watching the pilot first, so doesn't bother to reintroduce its characters. And they're correct. Look, I'm no professional writer, yet, but one thing you're gonna need to note when writing is that if you want the audience to care about a character, you need to let them get to know the character first. If you introduce a character that we know nothing about beforehand, the audience is gonna have questions. There's gonna be an air of mystery about them. What's their motivation? Their backstory? Do they have any friends? Enemies? Fears? You can start by answering one of the questions right off the bat, but leave the others unanswered. Get your audience invested in this character. What this show ends up doing is either answering all the questions far too quickly, or not even presenting any questions at all. With Charlie, the main character, we see right off the bat that she wants to rehabilitate sinners in order to save them from extermination. Okay, good. That's her motivation. What else is there? What's left for us to care about? Oh, okay, she has parental issues. Alright, bit cliche, but we can work with this. Oh, it's been resolved. Okay. And then we take a character like Vaggie, for example. She's Charlie's girlfriend. Yup. There's kind of nothing here. Most of the time, Vaggie's just in the background, standing next to Charlie as she gives a big speech. I think she's supposed to be a force of logic to counter Charlie's naive enthusiasm, but Charlie doesn't do anything stupid in the story, and when she does, Vaggie isn't there to stop her, so what gives? There's even a big reveal in regards to Vaggie being a fallen angel, but because we didn't care about Vaggie in the first place, the reveal just kind of feels like nothing. And to make matters worse, the conflict this causes is immediately resolved in the next episode, despite the fact that Charlie and Vaggie don't talk throughout the entirety of it. It's just, what do you want me to feel? Do you want me to feel angry? I do. Most of these characters have one interesting plot point that surrounds them, and nothing else, which leads them to feel really one-dimensional and shallow. The audience doesn't care about these characters. Sir Pentious fucking died in the season 1 finale, and I felt nothing. Their arcs are either completely non-existent or far too rushed, which leads me to my next point. Yeah, this story is far too rushed. This is one of the problems with the show that brings it down for me the most. Everything's just happening so fast. Like, the first 2 episodes are fine, though I feel like Sir Pentious should have remained an antagonist at least up until episode 4, so that his transition over to joining the hotel felt a bit more deserved. But the mystery of who killed the angel was really intriguing. Until that was revealed in the 3rd episode to be someone we met in the same episode. And then Vaggie has a mini arc that should have waited until the next season, and then has a duet with this new lady despite never speaking to her before. And then we find out Angel's dark situation even though we've only spent 3 episodes with him, and then Husk sings him a song that changes their dynamic for the rest of the show, and then there's Charlie's dad, and entering heaven, and a trial, and Cannibal Town, and a big climactic war, and what? And sure, this could work in 1 season, but all of this happens in the duration of 8 episodes. Like, Christ, slow down, please! And I feel like this is the main culprit for the characters having no substance, because the writers haven't given themselves time to expand on them. Like, this is probably the one time that I'd recommend filler episodes, but they probably wouldn't even be classed as filler episodes, because you can use that time in those other episodes to character more. Like, why are we resolving all these plot points that were introduced 2 seconds ago when we could be expanding on what the fuck Nifty's deal is? A friend of mine managed to encapsulate a lot of my feelings on this subject by basically saying that watching episode 8 of Hazbin Hotel was like watching the finale of The Owl House, but if it was the finale of season 1. This show is so desperate to squeeze in as many plot points as possible that it prioritizes it over everything else, and its pacing, writing, and characters all suffer because of it. But speaking of suffering characters, let's move our focus over to a much more serious matter and my next point. I feel like it's definitely not uncommon to say that how Angel Dust's story was handled in the show was problematic. The case of Angel Dust's character is an interesting case for me because, unlike most of the other cast except for maybe Alistair, Angel isn't actually all that one-dimensional, but with that brings its own set of problems. From the beginning, it seems like Angel is just the token gay sex joke guy. He's a famous porn star who only joined Charlie's experiments so that he could get a free room, which you wouldn't know if you hadn't watched the pilot, by the way. But after the 2nd episode, it becomes apparent that there's definitely more to him than that. It seems that he may have some serious self-esteem issues. And it also becomes apparent after this, granted, very well done scene of him lying on his bed listening to the voicemails left by his boss, Valentino, that he may not be as enthusiastic about his job as it seems. There's a lot of potential here. We actually have a character who's being expanded on. Granted, it's only the second episode, and this definitely could have waited, but it's something. And then the fourth episode rolls around. Okay, here we go. So, I am not in any way saying that people shouldn't cover serious topics in animation, such as depression, abuse, or SA. It has been done incredibly well in some things I've seen before, such as BoJack Horseman, Hunter's relationship with Emperor Bellos in TOH, and that one episode of Moral Oral. You know which episode I'm referring to. What I am saying, however, is that it needs to be treated with care and respect. SA is not an aesthetic. It is a serious subject, and it needs to be treated as such. From the bedroom scene in episode 2, to the dressing room scene in episode 4, it seems like that's exactly what the show is gonna do. But then Poison rolls around. What the fuck? While the visuals are cool, and the vocal work is excellent, it is so clear to me from this that this subject is not being treated with respect, and instead a motif, which, I feel like I don't have to keep explaining this, is not a good way to handle this. At all. If in Moral Oral one of the women suddenly broke out in an over-sexualized, aesthetically pleasing musical number explaining how they feel, it would not have nearly the amount of weight and impact that it actually does. And my biggest problem with all of this is Valentino. If when you were first introduced to Val in the third episode and you were like, oh wow, this guy is a very funny and likable villain, only to watch the fourth and go, oh geez, am I a bad person for liking him at first? No, you're not. You are not a bad person for liking a horrible character that is presented as likable. You know whose fault that is? The fucking show. This show presents Valentino as this tall, sexy, charming moth villain, and it continues to have him act charming throughout the entire season. This is the most contributing factor as to why this storyline feels more like an aesthetic than a serious subject, because it takes away from how disgusting Val's actions actually are. The way this show presents Valentino confuses the shit out of me, because the line between a fun villain and a disgusting, abusive creep is so blurred that it makes me wonder how this show wants me to feel about him. What message is this show trying to get across? Oh wait, that leads me to my next point, actually. So, what exactly is this show trying to tell us? Other than Christianity bad, demons cool. In all seriousness, I get the feeling that the show's message is supposed to be that everyone deserves a second chance, which is a great message, but the show constantly contradicts itself. A good example of this is Vaggy's arc, the meaning of that word being used lightly, throughout episode 7, when she goes to get information from what's-her-name with the spear shoes. She has yet another musical number with Shoe Lady, in which she tells her that she can't win the war if she's only thinking of violence, and that she has to be fighting for love. But that's already Vaggy's main motivation, though. The reason she does everything she does is blatantly to protect Charlie. So why is this here? And this isn't exactly the first time the show does something like this either. I mean, honestly, the way some of these plot points resolve would put Steven Universe to shame. Everything just feels so wonky. I mean, it's such a shame because there's clearly so much passion that went into making this show. I mean, honestly, it's a miracle this show even exists, but because of how many flaws it has, it can never really be better than just fine. In some ways, it's even below Hell of a Boss for me, at least the first season. I really wanted to love this show, but it just doesn't live up to the hype. Well, this was interesting. I've never really done a video like this before, both with the fact that I've never made a review for a show before, and I've never made a video that was this overwhelmingly negative, but you know, I wanted to get my opinions out there, so anyway, thank you guys for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed this video despite the fact that it was just me blabbing for 15 minutes, but hey, if you did enjoy it, please feel free to let me know in the comments. And maybe consider subscribing while you're at it, maybe? That's the first time I've done that, that was weird. Anyway, bye.